In this video, we're going to learn how to create a title block. A title block is a uniform way to submit a drawing for engineering, architecture, and design. We're going to use a basic one that has a title, date, scale, and the name of the artist/designer. First, we're going to go over how you set up your piece of paper to create a title block. We have a Masonite drafting board, a regular sheet of paper. Now, the Masonite drafting board should have a smooth surface. Make sure you're not attaching your paper to the rough side. Some of you may have a drafting board that has a smooth side and a rough side. Some of you might have one that has smooth on both sides. So double check. Make sure your drafting board, wherever you're going to put your paper, you put it on the smooth side. Okay? Next, we're going to place our paper on our drafting board and we're going to lock and secure it. Now, this is going to be done using painter's tape, drafting dots, whatever's available. We like painter's tape and drafting dots and even drafter's tape because of its properties. It allows the paper to be stuck to the drafting board and allows us to remove the paper without damaging our paper too much. Now, the paper will be put on the drafting board. You're going to try to square the paper to the board. Now, a word of caution, not all drafting boards are created equal. They are not all square. If you were to put your T-square and slide it at each edge, it should be straight. Now, you can notice here, as I slide my T-square to each edge, you'll notice that it's not perfectly square and flat. Okay? This side happens to be square. This one is not. And it should be the same when you check your board. So this is square and that's square. So these three sides, 1, 2, 3, for this particular board have to be square, and we have a crooked side here. Most of the time this won't be a problem. All you have to do is account for it. So what I tell my students, if you can't square the paper to the board, square it to just the longest edge. So I'm going to select this edge. So I'm going to get some blue painter's tape, 4 small pieces, and square the paper. So I'm going to put these pieces of blue tape down. I'm going to move my paper until it's nice and square. The paper touches a T-square and it's on the edge of this paper. Looks pretty good there. I'm not going to worry about lining up the edges here. As long as I have one square edge, I could use my T-square. So holding this down, I'm just going to lock in the corners. And I'll lock in this corner like this. Wrap it around. And I'll wrap these corners as well. So my board, my paper, perfectly square, and I'm going to focus most of my movement using this edge. Okay? So now I'm going to start drawing the title block. I'm going to start with a 1/2 inch border. So for a 1/2 inch border, on a regular bench ruler, you're going to notice these graduations. So I'm going to go 1/2 inch all around. Okay? Now, I know this is being drawn by hand. I don't expect this to be perfectly drawn square. Plus or minus a 16th, a 32nd, that's fine. Just try to make sure it looks right. And square to the best of your ability. Now what I'm doing, I'm drawing 2 points so I can draw a line. Line that up over here, here, and here. Okay, now I can start drawing my straight edges. So when I draw my line using my T-square, I want to focus on doing a downward motion. As I'm drawing the line, I'm going to push down on my T-square and make sure I have pressure at both ends. What some students tend to do is put pressure on one edge, and as you're drawing down, you create a pivot point, and this could pivot. So line up your points, spread out your hand so pressure's nice and even all across the T-square, and I'll draw a very light line. I'm drawing light lines so we don't have to worry about them later when we have to erase them. Light lines are easy to erase, dark lines are not. Double check that it's nice and square. It looks pretty square. You could do a spot check and kind of just measure your border, a 1/2 inch border, at different locations, and if it looks pretty square, continue on. If you see a slope or something, go back, erase it with a nice white eraser, clean it up, and try again. Okay? Now, we're going to draw the next part of our title block, and it's going to be a couple of rectangles. So let's start off with just the basic outline of it. So we're going to draw a line that is 1 inch away from this line. Make sure it's nice and square. Okay, looks good. So what I'm going to do next is draw another line. So let me double check this is square. So 1 inch there, so there's no slope. 1 inch there, no slope. Okay. So now I'm going to draw another line that is 1 away. So we want a square at the corner, and I'll explain what that is later. That's going to be important when we submit our projects. Okay. The next line we're going to draw is going to be another line going left to right, horizontal, and I need it to be a 1/4 inch away. So I'm going to line this up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4/16, 1/4. And just for good measure, I'm going to draw another 1/4 inch line over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks pretty good. And we're going to draw another 1/4 inch this way. It looks a little crooked, so I'm going to go back and erase it using this eraser. Since I drew a very light line, I can always go back and erase it. So let's try that again. Quarter inch. Quarter inch. And you can see there was a bit of a slope. Okay, that looks much better. So I'm going to go up 1/2 inch now. And draw the next line. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is draw a couple more vertical lines. So the distance from here to here is 6.5. I have an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, 8.5 going this way. So 8.5 minus 1/2 minus 1. So we have about 6.5 here. So I'm going to divide this into 3, which is about 2 3/16. So 1, 2, 3/16. 1, 2, 3/16. And just finish that up. Double check 2. Okay. And the basic layout of your title block's done. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause the video, go over this with nice dark lines, clean it up, and we'll show you the final product. Okay, we're back. So we've darkened our title block and we've erased some things to clean it up. Now, what I want to focus on is your attention here. Now, if you were to zoom in, and I'm just going to readjust this. I want you to notice that at this point here, you see this double line. When I was going back and retracing my lines to make them darker, I noticed there was a little bit of a slope. So I just left it here to illustrate. Always want to double check to make sure that your lines are nice and square. Okay, so there was a slight taper when I drew it the first time when it was light. When I went back and double checked it, I just drew the darker straight line. Okay, now the next tool that I want you to show you in your arsenal is called an eraser shield. Now you should have this in your arsenal, in your locker for tools. So when you're using this, you can manipulate this, use this anywhere to erase certain segments. So I just want to erase this light line and I want to leave my dark line. So I could actually move this around. Use my eraser shield here and just show the part that I want to erase, which is this part here. And I can go without worrying and erase this line. Okay, so that one's gone. I really don't care about the vertical line right now at the moment. I'm just trying to get rid of that extra line. And just keep moving down the line until it's gone. Notice that I never use my hand to brush off these eraser marks. You don't want to smudge your papers. I always use my eraser shield to clean it up. I'm going to do that. I'm going to bring that down. And we're going to clean that up. So line it up right there. One more here. Zoom back out. There you go. So this is your first title block. There's one last line we need to delete. It's going to be this line segment right in between here. So I'm going to use my eraser shield and delete that line. And we're almost done here. Okay, so this is where we would put some piece of information. First and foremost, let's go with the title of the drawing. Now, I want you to put the title of the drawing on this rectangle here. So I'm going to center it as best I can, and I'm going to use caps. We use all capitalized letters. They're clear, easy to understand. People are not going to confuse information. Down here, I'm going to put the date. So the date, and you can put a number. So I'll just put 01/01/16. Scale, the size of the drawing, If you happen to know the scale, insert it here. If you don't know, you could always default to NA, not applicable. Okay, there's nothing here in this drawing, so I'm just going to put NA, and then I put your name. Okay, and we're done. So that's how we create a title block for drawings to submit in the future in architecture, engineering, construction, and design.